You ever have one of those neighbors who treats the HOA like it's their personal kingdom? Yeah, I didn't think people like that actually existed either until I moved to Willow Creek. Nice enough neighborhood, beautiful trees, kids riding bikes, golden retrievers wagging tails like they're paid to do it. But nestled inside this suburban postcard was a small, festering wound named Sheila Donnelly, our self-appointed HOA queen. Now, I'm not a troublemaker. I'm a retired urban planner. Spent 30 years working on sustainable zoning and green space initiatives in the city. When my wife passed, I decided I needed quiet, soil under my nails, and the kind of peace only planting tomatoes can give. So I moved here, bought a modest house on a corner lot, and started a backyard garden that made my heart beat again. That garden, man, that was everything. Raised beds, native pollinators, a little shed I converted into a potting station. It was neat, it was orderly, and it didn't block anyone's view of anything. But somehow, Sheila saw it and damn near choked on her low-fat yogurt. That woman looked over the hedge like she was inspecting a crime scene. "I'm sorry," she said, clipboard in hand and her mouth puckered like she'd just eaten a lemon whole, "but your garden violates HOA Article 9, Section B unauthorized landscaping modifications." I blinked. "You mean the vegetables?" "It's about visual cohesion. Willow Creek has an aesthetic. Lady, it's a garden, not a billboard for adult diapers." She slapped a violation notice on my fence the next day. Said I had 14 days to dismantle the beds or face fines and further action. I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she had no idea who she was messing with. Now let's talk about HOAs for a second. I know some people think they're necessary to keep a neighborhood looking nice. But in the wrong hands? They're just another tool to control and intimidate. Sheila wasn't just enforcing rules, she was inventing them. The thing is, I read the HOA handbook when I moved in. Not because I expected drama, but because I used to write zoning guidelines for a living. Article 9, Section B? It covered invasive species, not organic heirloom vegetables. But Sheila didn't care. She had the board behind her, 3 other retirees who mostly nodded and voted however she said. So I appealed, sat in a folding chair in the clubhouse, and calmly explained that I wasn't in violation. That the native pollinator zone I installed actually increased property values. That the garden didn't attract pests, only bees and hummingbirds. And I backed it up with environmental impact studies. They denied me. Sheila smirked. Rules are rules. Right. So here's where the fun begins. What Sheila and her HOA minions didn't know was that the edge of my property bordered a section of land designated as ecological transition space, basically a patch of land that acts as a buffer between suburban and rural zones. It's a rare classification, and if developed or cultivated properly, it can qualify for land preservation under a state statute. I filed the paperwork that week, turned my garden from a violation into a conservation effort, contacted the State Department of Natural Resources, met with an environmental biologist named Louis, this big guy with a beard like a forest himself, who inspected the garden, smiled, and said, "Yeah, this qualifies." Within 6 weeks, my backyard was officially registered as protected habitat. You read that right. Protected. As in, no one, not even the HOA, can touch it without a state-level permit. Sheila tried to issue another violation. I mailed her a certified letter with the state seal, attached to a legal notice that essentially said, "Back off." She called an emergency HOA meeting. Tried to rile up the board by saying I was weaponizing legal loopholes. I stood up and said, "No, I'm just playing by the rules. You know, the ones that actually exist." She huffed, called me a troublemaker. I said, "That's funny. I thought I was just growing squash." Then came the real kicker. Because the property now had conservation status, it was eligible for a grant. A pretty generous one, actually meant for community education and public access. So what did I do? I opened my garden every Saturday morning, called it Nature Hour, invited kids to learn about composting, hosted little DIY workshops on growing native plants, even partnered with the local elementary school to let students plant their own vegetables. Sheila lost her mind. She filed a complaint with the city, claimed I was operating a public event space without permission. City inspector showed up, reviewed the papers, walked around with me, asked a few questions, then turned to Sheila and said, "Ma'am, this is a state-registered conservation site with an education clause. It's not only permitted, it's encouraged." You ever watch someone's face collapse in real time? It was glorious. And then came the twist I didn't see coming. Turns out, one of the kids from the gardening class's mom, a civil rights attorney. She asked me if I considered pressing back on HOA harassment. Said she looked into the violation history and found that Sheila had only ever fined people of color or immigrants for aesthetic violations. White folks with tacky lawn flamingos. Ignored. That little garden turned into a lawsuit. A class action one. The state didn't just back me up, they opened an investigation. The HOA board got slapped with formal complaints. Sheila, forced to resign, fined, and banned from holding any HOA office ever again. And me? I got to keep my tomatoes. Now the best part? The very rule Sheila used to try to shut me down, the one about unauthorized landscaping modifications, it got revised to include a protection clause for sustainability efforts. The new HOA board even asked me to help rewrite the guidelines. I said yes, as long as I could keep my hummingbirds and sunflowers. So yeah, Sheila came at me with a clipboard and a grudge, thinking I'd roll over. Instead, she ended up buried under her own rulebook. What do you think? Was I right to use the law to fight back? Or do HOAs really need that kind of strict control? Drop your thoughts below, I'd love to hear them. Thanks for listening to my story. If you've got ideas, stories, or just want more of this suburban justice, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.